Old business. First item is the Tipsy Mermaid, and we have a presentation today. Will that be you, David?
As soon as I recuse myself,
Yes.
and is there a member of the public? Is Greg Merrill on? Got you.
Greg Merrill.
Yeah. Can you tell?
Oh, Kara's there too.
Yep.
Is that a no? You don't think?
It doesn't sound like he's online.
No, nobody's on. Okay. Oh, I do.
Yeah, and just to note that another member has joined remotely, so we have a total of 7 members. And then let the record show that David Roush is recusing himself for this item.
Well, I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of the owner and operator. Greg Merrill was supposed to be on by Zoom, but he may be in surgery already. I'm not sure. So I'll kind of introduce our update, and Sherry's out of town, so I'm kind of it. So, but basically, just at a high level. The appreciation for the past support that this committee has given this project, which has been a journey to get to what we think is going to be a really, really special answer for the Main Street. We've been able to start demolition, and again, I think that as the project has evolved, we've come up with a nice design, which also honors the kind of the historic integrity of the original building. And as such, as we started taking off the siding, we had some pleasant surprises, which have given our client and ourselves, for that matter, good reason to try to be maybe even a little bit more purposeful with, preserving and maintaining the integrity of the original building, which is, 140 years old or so. The first pleasant surprise is we were anticipating, and this has proved out to be the case, that the siding that was covered up by the asbestos was in relatively good condition. That's one of the advantages of these re-siding programs, and that has in fact turned out to be the case. What we weren't expecting, though, was a level of detail that included the fish scale gable siding and what some sort of banding that would have occurred along the eave lines on the gables. And when you see the image that's in front of you, what you'll see is 4 or 5 boards. Those are actually like furring boards that they took something off, and then they added these boards to buck out the wall so that when they put the asbestos siding on, it was all flush. So those are just additive kind of things. We have looked at Sullivan Muntz, the state library, and I've even reached out to a former occupant of the building, but didn't get a reply from her to see if we could find any historic images of what was there originally. We've also researched, the historic districts in Indianapolis to see if we could find anything that was exactly the same. And we've turned up blanks on all of those. So what we've tried to do is come up with what we think will be a good iteration, and again, position the building for, kind of its next 100 years. What we think.
Hey, David, do we have a copy we can share?
You should have something in your packet.
Oh,
Whatever Zach would have emailed out.
all right. We're nothing on the remote though. All right.
I'll forward something to you quick.
Sorry to interrupt, David.
I'm not sure I have the keys to that car.
If you check the invite from the calendar, there should be something attached to that.
What we think is and think would be the operative word. We think there was probably the possibility that there was what we're going to call a pent roof, which is a shallow gable that runs across and connects the eaves from side to side. And we also think the windows might have actually been shorter originally, where the top of that board line is. And there's one window on the north side that is shorter. We can't tell. We don't have any images. We have a couple of images from Sullivan Months, but they're not revealing, and they're since the siding has been on.
You can't tell from inside.
You can't tell from inside. The other thing is that the trim on the second floor is a little bit of high style for the second floor of a building like this. That tells me that there was, and the windows are all replacements up there. So there was probably something done 50 to 100 years ago, and it's all fine. And we're not going to, go backwards on that. But my point to that is that a pent roof or any sort of ornate detailing that would have been there would have run continuously underneath the windows and not through them. So we're going to be bound a little bit by maintaining the existing windows on the three facades. So to that end, we've come up with an assembly of trim details that layer up trim. And I guess the other revealing thing is there is a shadow of a dental molding that runs its dots along the bottom of that trim, which also indicates to me there was something that was built out forward. But again, the building can't talk, and we're just going to do the best that we can to interpret what might have been there, but then B, come up with a solution that works with, the building as it sits today. Clearly, we're not going to go back and cut the windows in half and do things like that. So
Is the porch original?
the porch does not appear to be original either. So
It would be later than.
yeah, and what probably, without doing any diagnosis on it, a house of that age probably would have had a wood porch originally, and then over time it probably just rotted out, or started to deteriorate. And then the porch that's there, that stone pattern, is pretty common around the Midwest, and probably goes back, I'm guessing, to the first half of the 20th century. But it's clearly not original, but it's it's solid, and it's been there forever. And at some point you got to kind of stop pulling on the ball of yarn.
Is the plan then to remove it and redo the roofing along the?
What we're in front of you today for really 3 or 4 things. The first is the siding, that we have an unexpected additional cost of about $12,000 to restore, sort of the embellishment of the transition between the lap siding and the fish scale siding, and that's illustrated in the drawings we provided. The second item that we are here to talk about is that originally there were 4 windows. We've now determined there were 4 windows on the porch. The first window to the north of the doors was covered over at some point. And now that we've taken the siding off, and there was a fairly unsatisfactory patch, we'll just call it that, the desire would be to go ahead and replace that window. And then in so doing, since those 4 windows are in very close proximity to both indoor and outdoor dining, the proposal is to replace all 4 of the window, add the 1 window, and then replace the other 3 so they all match. They would be 4/4 double hungs and replicate what's there today. So that's the second item that we're here to talk about. The third is relatively insignificant, but the pier entry doors were added again sometime probably in the latter part of the 20th century. They're actually 5 foot wide, and we now can see that the original door was 6 feet wide. There was a relatively challenged patch on the north side of the door jamb. So it's pretty untidy, and we're either going to add some trim there to the north side of that, or if it's feasible, we will actually slide the door in the existing opening, 6 inches or so, and add trim to both sides. So it will recenter. Right now, it's a foot to the south of the entry. It's in it, and no one would probably notice that, except for the fact that there's a bunch of little 10-inch pieces of siding that are all whopper jawed on the north side. Yeah, if you stand on the sidewalk, it'll be pretty obvious to you. So there's a little bit of work there. And then the last item, which is,
So,
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
you said, so you would replace the doors? as
No,
opposed to-
no, that's a good, we actually looked at replacing the door, but both Sherry and Greg, I think there's a lot of, the door looks nice, and I think they would prefer to keep it. So we're just going to try to make it get so it fits better in the opening. In a perfect world, we'll be able to just cut it free and slide the whole thing over so that it centers back up. And if not, we'll add a piece of trim and a lighter sign on the north side, something just to, it's not even so much about alignment and centering as it is the fact that there's little siding patches that are hard to see in this image, but if you were sitting there enjoying a meal, you would look at it and say, well,
CD issue.
yeah, some of us would have that. So
You're not gonna replace the window immediately adjacent north of the entry then? It looks over here like there's not a.
yeah, we're putting that window in. Yes, that's,
So that we'll go back in there then.
yeah, that's the first piece. And then the dominoes are that once we do that, we'll have one new window and three sort of in disrepair. The window to the farthest north is actually sagging quite remarkably. The sill of it, if you weren't up there to look at it, is probably 3 or 4 inches out of level. So by virtue of deciding to replace the window to the north, then we feel that the other three remaining existing windows should also be replaced, so that they all match and they're all insulated glass and good forever.
That would let you not need storms on them.
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Which would look really nice.
Yeah, you get the shadow lines back and that sort of thing. Yes. So the windows would be, so the siding is item 1, the windows are item 2, the door trim centering is item 3, a very small thing. And then the fourth item then is the roof. Our original design included replacing the porch roof with shingles, only because we're adding on and we were tying to it. So we wanted a continuous look. But as we've gotten to the, into the demolition phase and looking at, particularly on the east side, there were a number of shingles that had actually fallen free, that we've decided the prudent decision, again, to position the building for its long term is to go ahead and re-roof the entire building. By now being able to get into the attic, we can see that there was originally spaced sheathing on the roof, which means, if you're building a home today, it's all plywood or OSB or something. But in the day, or if you were to go into a barn, you would see what's called space sheathing, which are 1x boards every 12 inches or so. And that's a signal that it was actually a metal roof originally, which would have been stylistically correct back in the day. And that's since been re-roofed over with plywood and shingles, but the space sheathing that's there and the owner's desire to, again, position to build this Main Street building for, a really vivid, long-term, enduring appearance. Their ask is to go ahead and re-roof the building in its entirety with a low-profile standing seam roof, which would replicate, something that would have been there 100 years ago or so. Back in the day, they called them tin roofs. So that's the fourth item on our request today. So understanding that the committee's been, gracious and generous with its evaluation and contribution to the project thus far, we're here today to see if we might be able to garner some additional support for, these unforeseen additional costs that, again, turn the building back into a more sort of historic fit to what would have been there originally. By our estimation with capital constructions input, the sum of those contributing items here today is about $65,000. The largest of those is the allocation of the roof. And that number, just to be clear, is only the roof attributable to the original building. It does not include the roof for the addition, which is more than what's here. And it's also a net difference between the cost of the modest cost that we had for some of the reshingling. So in simple terms, we have a little bit of trim work, again, very little for the entry door. The windows are a sum total of about it's $5,200 for the 3 windows and $1,700 for the new window that's coming in. The siding trim work is $12,500, and then the net allocated portion for the standing seam roof is $37,500 plus the fees. So that brings the total to about $65,000.
David, is that material?
That's materials and labor. Yeah, it's all in.
What color is the metal roof going to be?
Subject to final decision upon, first of all, the determination of the committee would concur with that. We think it would probably be a neutral gray that would not compete with the color of the house and be, originally, a tin roof would have been a kind of a medium gray color. So that's kind of where we're steering.
Sort of tin.
Yeah, but it'll be painted. It'll have a painted finish, but something that is
But it would
neutral.
have more of the appearance of an original tin roof if you keep that color.
That's correct. And we've also chosen a standing seam product that has a pretty low profile. It's only got an inch, a very shallow seam, so that it doesn't jump up and look like a bigger batten seam that you would see on bigger commercial buildings.
Right. And with the 18-inch on center spacing that you guys called out, it would look like the historic tin roof too.
That's
So
correct.
The style's
That's
correct.
correct.
Yeah.
It's not the same product, and I probably shouldn't mention it, but as an example, the metal roof that we put on the Lemon Bar back in the day, that was actually unpainted galvanized, but has a smaller seam. That was site built, site fabricated, galvanized, but it gives you a kind of a feel for the texture. But again, as you said, Todd, the roof that would have been on here would have been either a very small seam, and I doubt that this would have been a flat seam, which you would have seen on some of the barns, but usually it was pretty modest and usually site built at the time back in the day.
Great. What color roof is that? Would that be a color plate of that roof?
The color?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was Todd asked. We haven't selected a final color yet, but I would anticipate there's a family of grays and warm grays that would probably be relatively medium, and we would make a final selection, with the committee's input. And obviously once the owner decides, our fallback position, if you will, would be to come back and we can reshingle the entire building. That's pretty easy to do. But again, I think Greg or Merrill, the building owner, is very interested in, the appearance, but more importantly, just the long-term durability. We got a building that's, well over 100 years old, and he sees this as obviously a long-term visual and, sort of a formidable asset for Main Street. So we would select that in final. So.
Right, and then come back to us for approval on that color.
We
Right.
would, yeah, we would. Yeah, and even to that point, there had been a fair amount of interest in the color, of the building itself, which is conceived to be yellow. We haven't identified the exact yellow yet, but now that we're at this point, I'm sure we'll be painting samples So I could see a sidewalk meeting with the committee's liaison. It's
Mhm.
happening maybe here, toward the first of the
Yeah, you've
year.
got some whites,
Mhm.
yellows,
Yep.
metal roof. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. All right.
David, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep, sure
this
can.
This is Kara speaking. Hi. I was curious if you had, and I may have missed this, but any sense of when it flipped from the tin roof to a shingle roof originally?
No, we don't have any sense of that.
Okay.
I just want the record to show that Justin Wagner has joined and has been listening in on this as well.
Yeah, he's been here since 8:17 a.m.
Okay.
So the only other question I have on those, and I know we haven't settled on final colors, but you're still looking at basically white trim for windows and.
We are, yeah. I don't remember the various drawings we produced, but a couple of judgment calls that we're making here. I think, I don't know if the other color drawing made the packet or not. So the judgment calls are with the transition from the lap siding to the fish scale and a little bit of detail there. We're not trying to build it out and try to recreate a bent roof or anything major because of the windows. If we were to build it out, then you'd have this really weird condition where it starts and stops at the windows. So our goal is to try to keep it all fairly modestly in the same plane, meaning within probably a couple of inches of the existing structure. To that end, our plan still is that the structure is primarily yellow with white trim. The windows, the fascia boards and that sort of thing would continue to be white. One subtlety here that I failed to point out is with the dental and the trim running across to the windows on the west main Main Street elevation. We've chosen to take the shutters off, which were on the original design, because we felt like they were competing visually, kind of and stylistically a little bit different. So we've gone ahead and removed those so that the trim can be, its own little piece there. To that end, we have also, and it doesn't show up, I'm sorry, on this drawing. I think we have another drawing.
Kind of shows what it would be.
Yes. We have another color drawing that I don't know that I have with me, but I'm happy to share, where we studied where you transition from white to yellow. And our assumption at this point is we would probably, even though we're adding this trim, we would probably keep the color relatively consistent yellow all the way through, just because there are these little trap spaces of siding between the roof and the bottom of the trim and so forth. And it might get fussy. Again, we would make that decision, kind of on site with mock-ups with the committee at this point. But in terms of the spirit of the building, the original renderings and the color rendition would all be very, very much on par with what you've seen to date. And then I guess as one other way of explanation, just to make sure you realize we did not sort of go past this. There was actually one comment at the spring approval. I think, Todd, you made it about whether we could increase the pitch of the gable at the entry itself. And we have at this point chosen not to do that. Not because we don't think it's a good idea, but particularly with the standing seam metal roof, if we raise the pitch up, then our seams will not match up on the corner, and we think that'll be visible enough. If we were to stay with shingles, we looked at raising it up so that we caught the top edge of the roof. But with the standing seam, we felt like we ought to keep it so it was a true 45. So with that, I will And what we've done with the grant request is identified what we believe to be, the cost of these items, as with anything with capital construction in tow, they will be providing actual, the final audited costs ultimately in the end. What we've gone ahead and done is taken the liberty just to apply the same formula from the previous approval to this as an ask for the committee, but obviously that's subject to your decisions.
Dave, is there signage going to be on the building?
Right now, we have a good question. We show a sign, a blade sign or a projected sign between the two windows. In the yellow drawing, the gray bar that's up there. There is, and we think that's still, a good answer, although Sherry is wondering out loud with us whether we would take that off the building. And we looked at one point of having a post sign sort of in the front yard. But as it stands right now, there's just a blade sign there, or a projected sign, sorry. And then there's a very small decal sign on the what we call cheek wall, the yellow cheek wall that's out at the right here at the street.
And the numbers that are in here don't include that sign. So
That's correct.
it's not something that we're approving. However, being part of the project and affecting the look of it, we would want to approve this sign as well.
Understand.
Yep.
And do you have an update on timeframe?
Yes. We're under construction.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Which I can speak for a number of people to say we're happy to be there finally. It's been an arduous journey, but I think it's good. Right now, the plan is to be done around potentially the 1st of March. Now that demolition is done, we're ready to actually now start, with underground and foundations. We're dealing with a couple of long lead items like everybody else in the industry is. And so we're trying to measure. We've actually, some mechanical equipment that we're actually having to look at some alternatives just because there have been some challenges there industry wide. But notwithstanding that, the construction schedule is right now indicates the 1st of March. So obviously coming into December and the winter, we'll have to, obviously succumb to the graces of the gods, but once the slab gets poured, which probably will be done here this year, then we should be good to go.
So kind of piggybacking off of that question, do you have an updated Gantt chart or something? Because I was looking at that just as you asked that. You have your critical path here, and obviously if you're out to March, it's not updated.
I don't have a Gantt chart. We have some dates that have been given up to us by Capital.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share that if the committee would like to see it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
I have no questions.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that, first of all, great job presenting and compiling all of the information, the documents that you provided to us. Showed what you did propose, what you're proposing now, has detailed product information to it, a good breakdown of the pricing. So really appreciate all the information that you've shared. Secondly, I think this is the exact reason why we have this committee, that, we want to keep originality and character and kind of trueness in the village. And, kudos to your team, the building owner, the new tenant, for finding these items and wanting to keep them, enhance them. I mean, that's, and as shown by this, it costs more money to do that. And that's the reason we have this committee, is to make good decisions and help people financially to make those decisions viable. So I think it's a perfect example of why we do this.
I agree with you 100%. And the added value to Main Street overall from an architectural standpoint. And within the family of work that the ZARC committee has done within the business district, this is yet another feather in the cap of how we pay great respect to the homage of the village, but yet step it up for a contemporary look, and at the same time to look at the demographics that come here. This is what they want.
You know, I bring people into Zionsville and put them in the First Street Inn as guests of my company, and we do that intentionally. The character of the town is always commented on, but the integrity of the preservation is noted 100%. People recognize the effort that's being made. It's clearly from the outsiders coming in, they're just truly impressed. So this is going to be beyond anybody's expectations.
Yeah. And then obviously construction costs, since this project began, continue to go up. So I'm sure that the original,
I didn't know.
yeah, I'm sure that the original monies that you guys had budgeted and what the actual costs are, have gone up as well. So that coupled with the fact that you're doing exactly, what we hope clients would do, I'm very comfortable, with the additional ask of funding based on the budget that we have and the quality of the work that's here.
Is there an assumption that this number is still floating, given any unknowns?
If we were to approve it, it would be this number, unless they don't want any kind of a vote today. I just wanted to get an idea of acceptance.
I don't think they're testing the water.
So, yeah, let me speak to that. Those are good questions. Recognizing, kind of the end of the calendar year and then the, kind of the financial realm that we're all in. I think our goal would be to ask for a vote on this today. Relative to the numbers, I would say that these are informed estimates that will be, and we're operating under the assumption that even if we exceed these estimates, which you never know, unless there's something like completely off the charts, that the committee would have an interest that the numbers, your allocations would be the cap for that. So we feel like we've got a decent handle on those costs, but again, the construction side now is just finishing its buyout, and we were hoping that we might have kind of that complete menu today, but we don't have that yet. But we'll have that for the committee as it goes forward. So I guess the context of this would be to have you understand that the grants that you offer would be obviously the cap, and that our accounting would either, if it exceeds that, then we would still be at that cap. If by some completely unexpected chance, or it could happen if there's some underrun, then we would obviously, bring that transparency back to the committee and adjust accordingly.
Right. When you win the final application
With the
for
final
payment, it would have all the actual numbers.
That's
If it was
correct.
less,
That
that's
is
okay.
correct. That's correct.
Great.
Well, I'd like to move to approve.
Can I say a couple things first, Tom? I agree. Great stuff. David walking us through it. I just had a couple questions. The second floor windows, are we replacing those? I can't tell.
No, we're not replacing those. The two windows that are on the south side that will now look into the upper part of the dining space obviously are getting removed. Actually, they're being called to be relocated to the new south elevation, but the other existing windows are all remaining.
All right. And so the lower levels are going to have the, wrong term, lattice, the horizontal, vertical, what's that? Sorry.
They're called, they're divided lights, but they'll be simulated divided lights. So basically there's a muntin on the outside and a muntin on the inside of the insulated glass. And then there's a spacer. It's a fairly common product that's used in such situations like this, so that you have.
So the second floor, are we gonna, I know we've talked about that in multiple projects. Do we replicate the same thing up above? And you guys are
No.
all architects, so no?
No, the second floor windows are in fact replacement windows. We don't know what the vintage is. There's a good chance that they would have come in when they were sided, maybe like whenever that would have been, the 50s or 60s. They are not wood windows like on the first floor, and they are 1/1. Stylistically, like I said, we have reason to believe that those windows were probably half as tall as they were originally, with that pent roof below them. If you're to look at the north elevation, there's one window that's left like that. We don't know that, we can't represent that, but stylistically, at the time, if they were in fact that, they would have been probably not divided lights. They would have just been simple openings. So, but again, that's all speculation at this point. So what you see here with the upper floor windows is what will remain.
All right. And then I guess Tom was going to move for it, but I guess what's the new total ask? It's 65,000 extra.
$24,256.
That's the new ad, or that's the additional ad? That makes sense?
Yeah, that's the additional.
Additional ad.
Yeah, the original grant request was 38,520.
I think
No,
that was
an old number.
yeah, I think the actual agreement says 34,250.
Yeah, the original was
Oh, I'm sorry.
34,250.
I had to look it up.
Sorry.
And the new grant request is an additional 24,256.
Dave, quick question. How much, I guess, in totality, have you requested from the town if we do, or if the board does approve this? So I feel like you guys came through CDC for a grant request as well.
There is a CDC grant on the project, and I don't have that number in my head right now. I can probably dig it out if you'd like to know.
I believe it's what, 125,000?
I believe that is correct. But I can
That's-
check here.
Yeah,
quickly.
something like
Yeah, I
that.
can-
Yeah.
I can speak to the CDC grant. The $125,000 number is correct.
Any other questions, Mike?
No, what was that number? The new ask? I'm writing meeting minutes as we go.
Okay, yeah, so the original ask that's been approved previously was 34,250. The new request is an additional 24,256.
Thank you.
So the combined is 58,506.
And then do we have any issues with encumbering it a second year from last year for last year's stuff?
So,
We've had problems in the past. I
yeah,
think.
item 6B on today's agenda will cover encumbering
All right.
of funds.
We may have to do that before we approve then. Oh, well, we got 50,000. I guess we got to have it.
Yeah,
No, we haven't.
yeah. All
That's
right.
it for me.
Can I ask a procedural question about encumbrance? Is the money getting distributed from RDC as requests come through? Is that how this works?
For our funding,
Right.
we distribute funds when the project is complete. Just a one time.
When do the funds hit our bank account?
So I can probably speak to that a little bit. Technically, it is coming from the RDC, but it is a food and beverage tax. I believe the town will actually issue that money. I don't think it's distributed to any of the other boards, such as the CDC or ZARC. So it is something coming straight from the town.
Thank you.
All right, do we
Okay.
have a motion?
I move that we approve the $24,256. I think it's a great add to the village, and at the same time, it's a great investment by the town.
All right,
Money will be recouped in no time.
yep.
I'd like to second that motion.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Great, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Get this
Yeah.
place opened up.
Nice work.
Can't wait to see it.
We're working on
Yeah,
it, so
we-
thank you. I apologize for having an old spreadsheet on the original ask, so.
Exactly why it was open.
All right, is David Roush rejoined the committee?
Where's Dave? See here?
Consider me rejoined.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, next item on the agenda is Nicholson Orthodontics, and the petitioner is here.
Morning, Paul Kite, Strongbox Commercial, 65 East Cedar. Thanks for inviting me to the Design and Construction Support Group. So we all have our challenges. We're here solely to ask for our grant to be pushed into 2023 because of similar delays and challenges described by Dave. We've had our interior designer, our sole proprietor out of California, has been somewhat slow in getting some fixtures approved and all kinds of issues for her personally. So that's delayed us a bit. We've also been delayed with getting the windows. That's been a couple months on that, getting windows in. Hopefully you guys have ordered your windows. So the current scheduled turnover is January 30th, 2023, with and that includes a 10-day schedule contingency that probably will get used, but we're not asking for any additional funding or anything like that, just to push into 2023.
Great, any questions for the petitioner?
None whatsoever. Sounds pretty normal
Yeah.
in the state.
Yeah, based on experience with other construction projects, this would be consistent with what's happened over the last couple of years with construction projects, so very understandable. Okay, so we do have item 6B about the encumbering of funds, and this would be a situation where we would encumber the funds towards the next year. And so we appreciate you coming in to present kind of the reasoning why and the request for it so that we can act on that today.
Can you remind us what the encumbrance matters?
Just to interject, we cannot re-encumber funds again.
Mhm.
So the funds that were encumbered in the original 2021 ask, you guys cannot re-encumber that from 2021. We've gone over that with finance. We can't do that. So if you would like to take funds from the current year and then encumber those for next year to then pay out next year, we could do that, but we cannot re-encumber funds from a previous year.
Okay, and this was 2021 money, that not 2022.
That is correct. So the big issue is you can encumber once going from 2021 to 2022, but that money is going to get lost and get pushed back into the general food and beverage tax fund. Something that we were given a recommendation to do is we could come before town council and ask for another ask and just have that money be pulled out of the food and beverage tax to be then reallocated for this purpose.
Mhm.
It just has to go before town council for that appropriation.
Mhm.
And you could basically request all these monies, whether that's going to be board members or the applicants, or it could be a combination of the two.
Mhm. Yeah, so to kind of give a summary, we have 50,000 available this year, and we just approved 24,256, and that will need to be encumbered to 2023. So we still have $25,744 in 2022 monies, which we could allocate to this project and then encumber it to 2023 and then basically forfeit the funds from 2021. That'd probably be the easiest.
That would also impact the previous ask of Tipsy Mermaid, because that was also made at the same time as Nicholson.
Same
That was
deal.
encumbered. So that was encumbered from 2021 to 2022.
Oh,
So that money, so technically you have.
we're losing both of those.
Your
Since-
34,000 was from 2021, because
Okay.
that was signed in December.
And we just updated it and it was just updated in.
But
the
that
spring.
money was coming from the same bucket. It's the same, you were just updating those funds or updating the board. It didn't change where that money had come from.
Are we better off asking for a relief from council for second encumbrance?
It wouldn't be a second encumbrance. It's more of just asking him to take that, because that money still exists. It's not going anywhere. It's just coming from one bucket and being pushed into another one, the general fund for the food and beverage tax. So it's basically just asking them to appropriate that money that was previously allocated in 2021 to this purpose for 2023.
So it just becomes restricted.
Yeah.
Or another option would be to, as opposed to or going before the board to encumber specific funds, you could then basically put on the books for next year, allocating funds from that year's budget to the rest of the balance. However you guys want to do this, but we do need to document it.
Is there a scenario we could do it to an escrow?
Now we're getting to a finance level.
Yeah, that's beyond our knowledge.
Well, that's a pretty common way.
Come on.
I can only speak anecdotally and I don't know what the amounts and the timing, how they relate to this. I think I'm recalling a couple cases in the past where we ran into this and construction was imminent. Define what that is, but there was the distribution was made, but not final, it wasn't, the transaction didn't occur until the construction, got done and everybody was satisfied. I don't remember the project.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times
Once or
where the
twice.
check is written this year, but held and not given, distributed to the petitioner until the following year because they were so close to being done.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that for Nicholson because they're so close to
Almost
being
done.
completed.
Correct.
I'm not, because you were saying March, or what was your completion date for Tipsy Mermaid?
Around March 1st.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's close enough or not. We would have to talk with finance and see what they're comfortable with.
No argument. Yeah. But not necessarily suggesting it, just
Yeah.
putting all the different scenarios on the table.
However they want.
Yep. Yeah, as long as the town's okay with it, it would make sense to not worry about re-encumbering the Nicholson funds and create that check this year, but not distribute it until the project is completely finalized and signed off on.
And theoretically, that's less than a 45-day hold.
Mhm.
But then we have Tipsy Mermaid.
Correct. That's a
Same deal.
Technically, that's going over your $50,000 budget for this year that you have for this year. So you wouldn't have the funds from 2022 to allocate to it completely.
Yeah, I think because that was a special one where we had received additional monies from the town in order to take care of that one and the co-hatch. That would be one, I think, where we would want to go to the town council probably and pull those monies back out. So.
Town council meets the first and third Monday, so I'm not sure which one you'd want to aim for this year, or if you want to wait until January when those funds had already been transferred back to. So
We probably want to get something on the docket in this calendar year.
Mhm.
just to put it on the radar, and then
Yeah.
we can figure out how they want to handle it from that point.
So this doesn't negate our vote though, does it?
No, you've allocated those funds. It's just,
Just approve the funding, now it's just the release.
yeah,
Timing
it's
mechanism.
just trying to get the finances in order behind the scenes.
Mhm. Okay. So for Tipsy Mermaid, the 24,256 is 2022 funds. The 34,250 will work with the town and the town council to get that money allocated. The encumbrance of that will go away. For Nicholson, the 25,000 that was encumbered from 2021 will go away. Because we're going to distribute funds this year and we don't need to re-encumber. Okay. All right, so we still have $25,000 additional funds for 2022 that's not been distributed.
Would that be,
Do we need to vote on Paul's? Is there any action or is it just an acknowledgement on Paul's?
I think this
we're
was more of an
replacing-
update.
Yeah,
And it sounded like you guys wanted to cut the check for Nicholson and then hold it until done.
Yeah, so we still have.
Yep.
And we will still have 25 in 2022's budget.
Correct.
Yes,
We're just
roughly.
cutting your check early,
25 and change.
That's fine.
45 day hold.
Yeah.
And we'll double check with finance and make sure that that's going to be all okay.
Yep. Yeah, because if it's not, worst case would be we've still got 25,000 in this year's budget where we can
You're safe.
encumber
either way.
those funds.
If you want to do something with it, we can.
Did you find
We'd have to
anything else you want to
rebuild part of the
spend
old
money on?
Do we have to come back then and authorize the release in 2023, or is the authorization already there?
So the committee responsible for that project would go out, check, make sure the work is completed and authorize the release of that.
So this is what we did with Cohatch. When Cohatch was finished, I went out and went through the project and signed off on the paper, and then that's when they got the check.
Yep. Mhm. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care.
All right.
Did we have a formal vote on that to encumber it?
No vote needed
Doesn't need-
on that. It's just an explanation as to when the project would get done to give us a comfort level of writing that check
Oh,
this year.
yes, we're just writing the check. All right.
Yep. All right, moving on to new business, Wildwood Home Design.
And I'm not sure if David will be joining us. Is there a David online from Wildwood? He was hesitant to, when I reached out to him, he said that he didn't feel 100% comfortable and he was going to see if he could get everything put together in time, but he never got back to me. So I'm assuming he wasn't prepared to come before us today.
Okay.
So he may be coming in December, but I'll keep you all updated.
Can you give us a 5-second or less summary of what this project is?
So let me see if I can find the address off the top of my head. Basically, they have a rear facing facade that faces onto First Street. And right now looks more like an alley. They want to renovate the area and make it look like a more appealing storefront because they technically have two frontages, but they want to renovate the rear and improve that area. There would be parking in the back. There'd be a fenced in courtyard and then an entrance to the business as well.
And where is this?
Just north of Sycamore on First Street. There is a large mural on one of the buildings next to it.
It's just to the south of Midwest Jewelers.
Right.
On the same side, right next to Midwest Jewelers. Yeah, I have been working with David and the building owner, Todd Kogan, for quite a while. And I was surprised to see them on this list for today.
Because I know you had originally mentioned that they were looking at being on the November agenda or potentially.
Yeah, they were having some design issues, or not issues, just getting their design finalized. And I advise them there's no sense in coming before the committee until they have everything ready to go to save them time, us time.
Yeah, no, that's
And
understandable.
he already, and he knows, I actually, the last time we talked, said I wouldn't even bother to do it in this calendar year. You're not prepared. And there were opportunities that this money was going to go away. So.
Yeah. So,
But it's a good project and will make a nice impact on First Street. So once it's before us, we'll see.
Any idea what the scope of the ask is?
I think 2 mil.
I can ask.
that's going to be over a few years.
No, I don't.
Let's talk
We
about
want to
encumbering
encumber
again.
that as well, but
All right, so
No, I
moving on to item 6B, the encumbering of funds. We don't have any funds allocated in 2021 that can be re-encumbered, so that discussion is over. And then we have just approved 24,256 for the Tipsy Mermaid out of 2022 funds that will need to be paid in 2023. So we would need to encumber those funds until 2023. Do we need to make a vote on that, or is that something that we just say we're going to do?
I don't think you need to,
Would that be
Vote.
something you guys would present to the town council then?
I think it's a financial, it's part of the contract. We're just sending it over to the next year because it hadn't been allocated yet.
All right,
I think it's just a formality.
okay.
but it's great that you guys are acknowledging it. We appreciate it.
Great. All right. All right, moving on to item 6C, the business district improvements to be presented by Tom Castellini.
Thank you. This is a project that I've been working on for several months, or actually for years, to try to find a way that we can better manage the 4-block business district. And within the 4-block business district, there's about 160 businesses. So if we take a look at that as an economic machine and the amount of money that it generates both in food and beverage and taxes for the city, it's a great machine. So it has been neglected in the maintenance and beautification of the village. It hasn't really been even touched in the sense of the possibilities that it presents to the community. So I've met with the mayor, the deputy mayor, the street department, Lance, and town council president, vice president, and offered them a solution to the problem. And it was very well received by the town that because we as the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee is kind of already has our boundaries are set, our funds are set. We have demonstrated over the almost 20 years that we've been in business that we are a fabulous steward of the town's money. And when you take a look at the business district and the improvements that have come from the business district, I would say that the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee has impacted the village in an incredible way. And at every project that we have done for the village has been a moneymaker for the town. So we are, as a committee, we are also an economic development arm. We've just never been looked at it that way. But when you look at it as an overall 30,000 feet, we are an economic arm. And one thing that we have missed is the value of the presentation of our village, and that there's an opportunity to step it up so much with, in a sense, very little cost. So we are now, as the Business District Management Committee, we will act as other committees. So I'm finalizing this later on today and between now and the end of December with the town from a legal aspect and financial aspect. But we will be presenting budgets on items that we feel need to be addressed in the village. Some of those are, there's landscaping contract. I've been in touch with Lance and working with Lance. We have simplified and modified the landscaping in the village. You know, the bump outs or drainage areas, they have won. We don't have the budget. We don't have the ability to hire a landscape company that can take care of the vegetation. And every time we try to change that vegetation, it lasts about 6 months, and then next season it's done. So I think that things that are in thought right now are all of the bump outs in the drainage areas will be stripped of all vegetation, and decorative stones go in, and we'll replace those with pots. As the addition of the pots that are in the downtown right now have been a good addition, and we need to just really step that up more. So we're trying to streamline the landscaping projects, and we're also looking to try to have a local landscape company bid, and hopefully we will have a local landscape company do that. And that will be the first step in really starting to improve the village. There's going to be new paving throughout the village in 2023, along with parking lots restriped. And so we're starting an opportunity to be able to have a vision for what we want our downtown to look like. So some of the things other than landscape contracts and that kind of thing is lighting throughout the village. All the parking lots need to be lit. The village is really fairly dark at night. And when you think if you're a visitor, you're coming to town and it's night, you pull in off of 116th Street or Sycamore, you come in from 106th Street. As you're approaching the village, it looks like it's asleep. And lighting is a big opportunity to introduce some energy to the village. And with things that are coming online, Tipsy Mermaid, and once the Brick Street Inn begins their construction, we really need to step our game up. So, and then signage, wayfinding. These are just a list of items. I won't go through them. I'll just list them. Signage, wayfinding, public restrooms, believe it or not, things all the way down to bike racks. The pocket park, if you're familiar with what the pocket park is, where the town clock is. That space is way underutilized. That space can turn into a fabulous welcoming space. An opportunity to open up that whole block. Those hedges kind of cut it off. There are just so many opportunities for visual enhancements, new flags, curbside repairs and improvements. There are areas that we need new crosswalks, zebra striping, crosswalks for safety reasons. And there are opportunities throughout the village that once we start to look at this at 30,000 feet and look at it as a total 4-block experience, there are pockets in the village that can be within the business district, sorry, not the village, within the 4-block business district, that it can be wonderful conversation spots, welcoming to our guests. So we can have the opportunity to take the experience of Main Street and spread it out to Elm and First Street on the side streets. And with new lighting in the village and with some of these other areas, little pocket areas around the village, they will also be an opportunity for public art. We will have, as the business management committee, there may be other areas that we can request funds from, and we can assist the cultural district. So we will be able to build a partnership with everyone involved within the business district. And when we think of the money that we spend and that we invest in the village and all the projects that we've done from the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee standpoint, we will actually be mirroring the same thing. And an example of that is it took us quite a while to get the PNC parking lot paved, because there was an investment of $150,000 that was questionable, or timing may not have been right or whatever. Well, now that parking lot has been in existence a little over a year, and we have close to 50 new spaces. It's pretty simple math. 50 new spaces, 7 days a week or 6 days a week. We're putting about 10,000 people in the village. That come with ease. And when we start to look, and so when you take and break that down, that $150,000 investment has been paid for and now it's making the town money. So when we look at these projects and we come to ask for money, I think that we will have an opportunity to show that it's a great investment in the crown jewel. And this is the first time in a very long time that I have been a part of the village as a business owner and also a resident, that we have the opportunity to actually treat the business district as the crown jewel. Without it, the business district is the #1 tourist attraction in Boone County. And as Boone County is exploding, we have yet another opportunity to garner business for our Main Street merchants and restaurants and business owners. And then when you take Brick Street in, adding 31 more rooms, where they're going to be up to maybe 39 rooms, everything is demanding us to pay attention. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to take this over and pay attention. So that's what I brought to you. I hope you like it.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit about funding for this? Will there be a fixed budget per year? And where do the project ideas come from?
Well, I think as I listed, some of those project ideas are going to come from us. And by the way, I've also visited with a number of merchants in the village to get their input, and also residents of the village. And at every moment, I have gotten nothing but positive feedback. Where the money will come from, and these are things that we're working out between now and the end of the year, but it will be as if we will have an ask. Let's say we'll use lighting. Let's say we decided we're going to do lighting and we're going to need $300,000 to do lighting. We put together the budgets, we'll put together opportunities and maybe 3 quotes, bring it to the town, bring it and present it to town council for approval. And once again, because I've spent the time to speak with town council members, the city as well, they all feel that this is a good pathway to begin with. And then after we have worked our way through it, then there'll be a time that we will find that if we have X amount of dollars per year in a fixed budget similar to what we have here, we hope that we get to that becomes more of a maintenance. We have large assets that are going to be basically one-time buys, new lighting and things of that sort. And once those are there, it's done. But then after that, in a sense, the maintenance of it and things that we come up with. So,
Is there some prioritization to your project lists?
well, there is, but we're going to start out in a sense, if you will, low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
And hopefully within the next several months, we will look at the bigger projects.
Lower hanging in dollars?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been working with Lance and Roger on youth flags, for example. But investigating those, whether they're going to be nylon or whether they're going to be polyester, how we're going to get more use out of our money in those investments.
It'd be interesting. I don't know if it comes out of the town's responsibility, but do we ever go to our guests, be it out of towners or whatever, and survey them on their experiences and ideas and recommendations?
Well, I think business owners do. I think there is a soft survey of that. For example, public restrooms.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I put public restroom, if I mentioned it on the list, but it's on the list. Public restrooms are, bike racks are. You take a look at Rosie's, that little pocket area there. A year or so ago, the landscape people were out there measuring, making sure they had really pretty nice straight rows and putting flowers in. I went over and I said, those are going to last about 45 days at least, maybe not, because Rosie's clients are going to trample and park their bikes there and all that. So, and I think at the same time, once that we have this implemented and are able to show the improvements within the village business district, I think that will also up the merchants' games. I think they will be more involved in making sure their storefronts are clean. You know, if you have outdoor dining and you haven't power washed your sidewalk, it looks like you dumped your grease trap out there. Maybe it's time that you would power wash your sidewalk, things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, so, and this will be the ZARC initiative.
Yes, it'll come under our umbrella because we are already designated to use funds within the business district. But it will just be the business district management committee. So if someone has ideas or feels that there's an improvement they'd like to see within the business district, then they can make the suggestions to us and we will investigate it. You know, if it's something frivolous, we'll thank them for their thoughts.
Right.
Are we gonna reach a point where our budget doesn't meet our need? Whether it's the typical ZARC projects, which I sense I keep running into, or coming out of COVID, we're probably going to see more things, but is our budget really going to sustain what we're needing to do?
Well, I think that because right now we don't have a set budget and that we're all going to fill our way through this, I think the only way I can answer that is with the enthusiasm that those that from the town council to the mayor's office, with that enthusiasm and knowing that there's going to be things that we're asking for that aren't small. You know, because eventually as you start to look at how we increase the experience into the village, well, there needs to be some sort of lighting system down 106th Street from 421. When you turn 106th Street, you really don't get any real lighting to know where you're going until you get to Zionsville Road. So, and signage, you know, we drastically need signage on 421 that says something about this is the village. We have maybe an 8x10 sign, green sign on the west side of the road that says village. I think we're grown up enough now that we should be able to have signage out on 421 that actually directs people to the village and not to Carmel.
Right.
Is this more a DPW funding source? This is money that ultimately DPW would allocate either for our governance, is that correct? Or is it?
You mean Lance?
DPW meaning Lance,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
Yes.
New
Yeah,
title.
no. And then quite honestly and openly with my, Lance was one of the first people that I made the presentation to because it affects his business. And I didn't want this to come to him any other way than through me. And he was very excited about the opportunity to have someone help in the management of the village, of the business district. You know, we're growing at a rate that he's always understaffed, you know, and it's really difficult for him and his staff to pay the attention at the level of attention that we'd like to have with the business district in mind.
Yeah. You know, something I just learned was this tech park is going in outside of Lebanon. In 3 years, they're projecting 20,000 employees in that market. 5,000 of those are STEM. So you can assume that 5,000 STEM jobs in that industrial park are going to put a fair percentage of those in Zionsville.
Certainly, you know, and I think that because of the sensitivity of how the ZARC committee has looked at every request and every project that we have done, we can up the game in the business district and still not make a whole lot of changes. It's all about, we have
But it's paying attention to it.
well, we have an opportunity to make a really high level change. For example, maybe next year we decide that the business district needs a different Christmas presentation than the presentation we're doing now. Because I think that our clientele will demand it. But that doesn't mean that we're turning it into Las Vegas. It means that we do a tasteful lighting scheme throughout the village for the holidays. I mean, so it's just an opportunity, I think, to be of greater service to the community, to the town, and do it sincerely.
Without this sounding like it's bureaucratic, is there any sort of operational plan or white paper or anything that's somebody, whether it's Lance or the mayor's office or ourselves, need to write to kind of put a little bit more framework?
Oh, yes, that's what I mean, that later on today, I'm having a meeting with the mayor and for all of the steps that we'll have to take to finalize this. You know, because there's some legal aspects that have to be taken care of and some financials, you know, all those aspects to have this white paper done so that we know, everybody knows our parameters in a sense and what we can and can't do. But as of right now, under the term management of the business district, we're pretty wide open.
Okay, good.
And I have to say this too, that and I'll close with this. In my presentation and about this coming under the ZARC committee, everyone was very excited about it because several said, you know, that our reputation is for the town is impeccable, that we have always been extremely respectful of the funds. And when you see the result of our work, and I think that was the aspect that made this transition very easy to present. So kudos to this committee and what we've done.
Kudos to you for
Yeah.
driving this.
Oh,
I think,
I'm very excited about the possibilities of this. This could be phenomenal.
I think, you know, your initiative is not to be understated. I mean, it really, you didn't have to do this. And I think that you've kind of taken the bull by the horns is awesome. And I guess what I would say is a couple of comments anecdotally. One is, as you kind of alluded to, because it's a finite area, but it's kind of, if you will, it's the marker, it's the signature of the community. You can make high impact and without having to, you know, put 5,000 streetlights through the whole village or the whole town kind of thing. So there is high impact, but kind of anecdotally, I had a developer client a number of years ago who was not from the area and had an interesting sort of observation. And his observation was, yeah, Zionsville, and he a pretty worldly kind of guy, and Zionsville has a lot of charm and character, but there's a lot of things that you get, I call it house blind to. And there's a phenomenon that says if you hang a picture on the wall, you'll see that picture for 21 days. And then it will just disappear to you because it's part of the entourage. And and I think that a lot of things you're talking about here are things that, because we're living, you know, and breathing and walking up and down the same street, and you just go past it a lot. But if you were fresh to the area, you might have a different take. It's not off-putting, but it is very real. And when you go to, you know, other similar communities, you'll see a good deal of housekeeping and care to certainly the signature areas. So I commend you greatly. And I think that and I think the rest of the community, I won't speak for everybody, but whatever we can do. And you know, there's obviously high aesthetics here too. So how it's done is as important as going back to the days where I got the frantic call the night before they were going to re-brick the streets 25 years ago or whenever that was. So it's important to do it, not just do it, but also do it right. So thank you very much for
And I'd say also
carrying the
that
baton.
I think your 21-day vision was spot on, because I think we see this every day and we admire it or we think it's great, but we see it and think it's great. People that are coming into town have a better perspective of it. And I'm just curious how we can capture that feedback in this process so that we recognize things that might be as obvious to them and not as obvious to us, or help us look at things differently. So I'm suggesting, is there a way to capture some outside feedback through focus groups or tracking folks that are staying in the inn or things that gives us feedback that from people that are coming and seeing it somewhat for the first time.
Well, before you answer that, Tom, I might just expand that and say, I think on something like this, it kind of comes from multiple things. The feedback is interesting because you do get fresh eyes. I think, as this plays out, whether we as individual committee members, have some sort of, laundry list, but also DPW and Lance and the town itself probably has, some number of things, some that are very functionally required, maybe some that are less required, but more, sort of optional. And bringing all those things together would be a very healthy exercise.
Yeah, my comment on that is where we are now for the next several years. I think it's obvious right in front of us of what we need. And then we can get feedback from that, but I'm not the kind of guy to waste time doing surveys.
I'm not asking to put anything
Ain't
on
gonna
it.
happen.
I'm just saying that as I bring guests in, I bring quite a few of them in, and they come from all over the country. And I get the on-the-spot feedback of good, bad, and indifferent. But it's feedback that I wouldn't think of because I don't see it the way they saw it.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. They don't know what it is. They don't know how good it is because they haven't seen how good it is.
No, but their observation is fresh.
Yeah. And that's when you'll find that whether their observations are the bump out areas, boy, those could use.
Well, you got one-timers and you got folks that just casually come over. So there's different audiences that can have different views for different reasons.
Yeah, a lot of times the one-timers are here and gone, and it's sometimes based on they may not even notice the presentation of the village. Their impact may be they had a great meal or they did great shopping.
Yeah.
And so for them, it was a perfect experience. But
So Tom,
Yes.
sorry. Tom, overall, I am thrilled at your initiative here and the thinking behind it. I'm very excited about that. I think I'm curious, and these are all next steps that I'm sure are coming up, but how do we capture, what is the methodology that we want to agree to on how we capture what voices and opinions and what weights those different voices and opinions get? For example, we may weigh guest surveys pretty lowly. Somebody may weigh it very highly. So I just am very curious to kind of structure, I'm doing air quotes, which you can't see, but what is our path to the ask that is defensible, that provides the right value, that is supports this vision. I also would recommend maybe explore that we do a sort of a high level user experience map of these 4 blocks and establish, that may be a helpful tool for us, or at least a mental framework as we establish what people know, what we want people to know, see, feel, and do at various points in their experience with the village district. So all of that to say, I know there's plenty of future steps and questions about, are we suggesting an operating budget? Are we suggesting just a capital improvements budget? I know that's all future, but I'm just very excited that you have spearheaded this, and it has my full support.
thank you. And I can only address some of the things you're talking about is, after we do an initial cleanup, then we begin to really look at it, but we're in desperate need of initial cleanup. We know that, for example, lighting is very necessary. I've mentioned it to several officers in the Zionsville Police Department, and they would love to see better lighting throughout the village, especially in the parking lots, in patrolling and safety. But so, yeah, it's a concept right now, and that's the other wonderful thing about it being in this committee. We have a lot of great ideas and a lot of great people that can come together with ideas. And as far as what budgets will be or will not be, I think that our first year and what we get done will also, once again, indicate that when we ask for something, we're serious about it and we have a very good solution to a problem. And I think that the only reason why some of these things happen and I was able to get this done is because you come to the table with a solution and willing to work on that solution outside and not come to the table with a solution and have them go figure it out, whether it's a good solution or not. We have the intellect and the capability of bringing it to the table with a solution that makes sense for the expenditure of what we ask.
We have to change our charter.
Definitely will.
Yeah, and those are, as I mentioned earlier, those are things that we will be working with the town for the legal aspect of what we have to do. Town lawyers are going to assist us on that.
And as we've seen with other initiatives that we've taken on, like expanding the boundaries, there will be interested parties in the community, that want our role defined probably. And so definitely like presenting it today in a public format, keeping everything out in the open and discussed in public, and have an official document eventually that states, what our responsibilities are, et cetera, so that, we know what our intentions are good, but just making sure that as representatives of Zionsville, and so the public can have peace of mind as well as what our mission is. So
And this isn't just Scope Creek trying to grab more geography of budgets.
Yep.
No, and within that, in making the presentation of this, I think one of the key motivators to do it is to point out that, well, in asking almost everyone I worked with it, how many businesses they feel were operating in the 4-block business district, they generally missed it by 50%. Wow. So when you say there's 160 businesses operating in the 4-block area, what we're really doing is we're asking for the amount of money that we make through TIF and food and beverage. We're simply asking for a respectable amount of that money to be reinvested in the business district. We are not taking funds from anyone else to have this happen. What we're finally doing is recognizing that those 4 blocks generate enough money to make those 4 blocks as presentable to our clientele and its safety and all aspects. So we're not taking money from anyone else. We've earned the money. Now we'd like to have a piece of it back.
Well,
in my simple, for me, that's how I look at it.
But in addition to that, improve these improvements, make the village more interesting, exciting, inviting. You bring in more people come back again, and you generate more money. So it's the same thing that we do with our committee now.
Yeah.
These improvements actually generate more money than we spend.
Business
And
preservation.
that's the goal.
Yeah, it's just a matter of changing the thinking. That's all.
Yeah.
We just change the thinking from that kind of, but people have a perspective that if the business district is asking for something, we're taking something away from someone else.
Yeah.
Where we're really not. And so it's just a change in thinking that, when someone asks me about the architectural review committee, I tell them that we're part of economic development. They say, well, how are you? Well, let me show you how we are. And this is, once again, part of economic development. It's because you don't see a tangible return on your money immediately. You think that that's not economic development. Well, we'll use the simplicity of the parking spaces. That's economic development, man, no matter how you look at it. Yeah, you didn't want to spend $150,000, but you've gotten it back and you're continuing to.
Right. And I think very important that you had mentioned previously, but I just want to make it really clear, is how you label this. You don't call it the village.
No, it's the business district.
Yeah.
4 blocks.
Yep, it's for the
160 businesses working their asses off.
Yeah, we're not doing things for houses or the village in general. This is for the business district, which is in line with our mission of improvements to businesses in our area.
Yep.
Are you talking to the chamber at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
The chamber knows this is happening. I mean, yeah. I've pretty much covered all the parties involved with it and talked.
This is down the road and I won't belabor it, but it makes your questions a good one. And it makes me wonder about, while we may be the shepherd of this, is there is there a steering committee that might include a chamber representative and or a DPW staff person, or, something that would, because as you talk about investing in the business district, which, there's a certain amount of stuff that's just going to happen as a function of town governance and maintenance and repair and so forth. So, getting all that to work in harmony would be good. And there is a micro group for Main Street. I don't know if that's, the right group out of the chamber, but there won't be a lack of interest, I guess is what I would say.
No, I've a lot of the people that I've talked to from the business district are part of that micro group. And we met several months ago at the studio to talk about the possibilities of something like this happening. And so they know it's all happening. Some of them know. I haven't told everyone that in the business district that this is happening until I know it's finalized. But the things you bring up, that's why now that this committee know it's happening, those are things that do we bring in someone from the chamber and someone from, we'll need to do that. Look at it and how we decide to do it.
Think big.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it that long.
I just want to affirm also what you're saying, because we have a lot of friends and visitors and they love coming to the village and Main Street. I mean, they like to come and eat and come and shop and just come and walk around. Also, just as I'm walking around for various and sundry reasons, run into people who are walking on the street and stop and chat. I will say that in the last year or two, this is totally random. People I've never seen in my life who just said they were here visiting, but restrooms really are a big deal. If you've driven an hour to get here, let's be reasonable. That's going to be an impact. And sometimes you don't get here right when you want to go and eat. So you don't, a restaurant isn't. So I do think that, and like you say, signage and lighting, those are all things, but I think it's a fantastic idea because, we already have a reputation. So let's enhance what happens when they get here.
It would be nice that once we are down the road, that we have a signature, that you can expect, a level that when you come to Zionsville that you can expect. Now, the restrooms are going to be a challenge because we just have to find, we don't have a lot of real estate, so we have to find the real estate and the location of the real estate. So it's a challenge. Because some people want them in the parking lot and I'll fight tooth and nail. We do not want public restrooms in parking lots.
I totally agree with you.
Off subject, any traction on the southwest corner of Zionsville Road and I call it Blueberry Forward, but where the gas station was.
Good go.
I have no idea. There's always some indication that is leads you to believe that it's positive and moving forward. But, and until once again, it doesn't. That was one of the reasons why they want an excuse of not investing $150,000 in the parking lot. Well,
you could create another entry to Zionsville.
Well, but as we move forward, that could be something that we can address from at least we can change it from
Beautification.
Yeah,
You get on the property first.
yeah.
Well, you get into the details.
Good stuff, Tom. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
right, thanks, Tom. All right,
Kara, thank you.
any other business? comments?
When's our next meeting? January?
Hearing none, our next meeting is Tuesday, December the 13th at 8 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'd love to.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Second to that. Who's second in the meeting?
What do I do? I seconded it.
Who's seconded the meeting? I can't hear you.
Oh, Steve
Steve
Freeland.
Freeland.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck on